My name is Loretta Langston. I'm 60 years old, and what I'm about to tell you today will forever change the way you look at your own family. Just 3 days ago, my own son, Darius, and my daughter-in-law, Tiana, pushed my husband, Calvin, and me off a 70-foot drop at the edge of Magnolia Ridge just outside Atlanta, Georgia. As I lay there broken and bleeding at the bottom of that rocky slope, my ears ringing, my vision blurred by tears and dust, I heard my husband's desperate whisper beside me, his voice thin with pain and fear. "Loretta, don't move. Play dead." His words scraped out of him like they were costing him the last of his strength. I wanted to turn my head toward him, to hold his hand, to tell him I was still there, still alive. But all I could do was cling to the sound of his voice and the pounding of my own heart. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst came after. The worst was when Calvin, my partner of 4 decades, revealed the most terrible truth a mother could ever hear, a truth he had carried alone, a secret our children had been wrapped up in for 25 years, for 4 decades. Calvin and I built what we thought was the perfect black family. We woke up every morning in our little brick house on the edge of South Atlanta, where the smell of fresh coffee mingled with the sound of birds in the pecan trees and the distant hum of city traffic. I worked as a teacher at the local elementary school, the kind of place where I knew every child's name and every parent by face. Every afternoon I'd come home with stories about my students who finally learned to read, who brought me a crooked little drawing that said, "Best teacher," who needed extra snacks because times were hard at home. Calvin had his own carpentry shop a few blocks away, tucked between a barber shop and a soul food diner. Inside that small workshop, he created the most beautiful furniture you've ever seen. His hands, dark and rough yet incredibly gentle, could turn a plain plank of wood into something that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread. He'd come home some evenings with sawdust still caught in his beard, smelling like cedar and sweat and effort. We had 2 sons, Marcus, our firstborn, and Darius, 5 years younger. Marcus was the soul of the house, the kind of boy who lit up a room the second he stepped into it. He was always laughing, always cracking jokes at the dinner table, always helping his father in the shop, holding boards steady, sanding carefully, asking questions about measurements and angles. He had this natural instinct to shield me from anything that might worry me, taking care of errands, picking up groceries, insisting on carrying all the heavy bags himself. Darius was different, quieter, more reserved. He stayed in his head a lot, always off to the side, watching rather than joining in. But I loved him with the same intensity, the same fierce, protective tenderness only a mama can understand. As a mother, you tell yourself you never play favorites, or at least, that's what I believed back then. On Sundays after church, the whole family would gather around our big oak table in the dining room, a table Calvin had carved with his own hands back when we were still newlyweds with nothing but dreams and a small mortgage. Marcus would talk with bright eyes about his plans to study engineering, about the scholarships he was applying for, about how he wanted to design buildings that would stand for generations in our community. Darius, on the other hand, would mostly stay quiet, pushing the food around on his plate, answering questions with short sentences, his gaze drifting somewhere far beyond the 4 walls of that room. Still, life felt simple and beautiful then. We didn't have much money, but we had enough. And we had each other. In the evenings, Calvin and I would walk the trail that wrapped around our neighborhood, nodding to neighbors sitting on their porches, listening to crickets and distant sirens and the soft rumble of cars. We'd talk about our future, about how we'd watch our grandbabies grow, about how we'd sit on that same porch with gray hair and wrinkled hands, still side by side. We dreamed about traveling when we finally retired, seeing the ocean in person instead of just on TV. Maybe visiting Savannah or Miami, renting a little place near the water. We talked about building a smaller house once our boys had their own families, something easier to maintain. Somewhere quiet but still close to church and community. I never imagined that all those evening walks were like rehearsals, training for the one walk that would almost kill me. On weekends, I'd host family gatherings where my sisters, now Denise and Rochelle, would come over with their husbands and children. The house would fill up with the sounds of kids running through the halls, slippers slapping against hardwood floors, cartoons playing too loud in the living room. In the kitchen, we women would swap recipes over pots of collard greens and mac and cheese. debating the right way to season chicken and whose cornbread came out best. Out in the yard, the men would pretend they were fixing something, a loose board on the fence, a crooked step, a squeaky hinge, but mostly they'd just talk and laugh, tools in hand. Beer bottles sweating on the porch rail. Calvin was my perfect partner through it all. After nearly 40 years of marriage, he still brought me wildflowers he picked from the side of the road on his way back from the shop. He'd help me grade my students' tests at the table while we watched the news, red pen in his big hand, even though half the time he complained about the way the district ran things. I'd hold pieces of wood steady for him while he cut them in the workshop, trusting him completely as the blade screamed through the grain inches from my fingers. We were a team, an unbreakable unit. Or so I thought. At night, we'd sit on the front porch under the soft yellow light, watching the stars peek through the haze above the city, planning our future in quiet, hopeful voices. We talked about traveling when we retired, about seeing the ocean for the first time, about building that smaller place once our kids started their own families. But perfect happiness, as I would discover years later, often hides the deepest tragedies. Life carried on with its usual rhythm until the year our firstborn, Marcus, turned 20. On the surface, everything still looked the same. Our brick house on the corner of Willow Street, Calvin's tools scattered across his workshop, my lesson plans spread out on the kitchen table. But something in the air shifted that year. There were whispers behind closed doors, arguments that died the second I walked into a room, tension that vibrated so sharply between our sons it felt like a wire ready to snap. I'd find Marcus and Darius standing too close, voices low, their faces tight with something I couldn't name. The moment they noticed me, they'd step apart, pretending everything was fine. But that mother's instinct, that deep, ancient knowing, kept tapping at my ribs. Something was wrong. Something had changed. Then came the night that destroyed our world. It was early October. A Friday so quiet you could hear the wind brushing through the pecan trees outside our window. I remember because I was grading spelling tests at the dining table when the phone buzzed at 10:47 p.m. It was Marcus, but he wasn't calling. He was supposed to be walking home from a study group across campus. He always let us know when he arrived. When midnight came with no sign of him, Calvin put on his jacket without saying a word. We searched for him the way parents do when fear turns their bones to ice, calling neighbors, driving through every street near the college, walking down paths with flashlights, shouting his name into the dark. By sunrise, the police joined the search. By noon, they found him. His body lay at the bottom of a gorge outside the city limits, a place he had no reason to be, a place he'd never mentioned visiting, a place that didn't fit him at all. The officers told us he must have slipped out a tragic accident. Wrong place, wrong time. Maybe he went walking to clear his mind. People say you scream when your child dies. I didn't. I folded. I crumpled down on the ground like my legs forgot what they were made for. My sisters had to pull me up, one under each arm. As my world caved in on itself, Calvin didn't cry. He didn't shout. He didn't say a word. He just stared at the officer's shoes, silent and hollow, like someone had scooped the life out of him. During the funeral, our community filled every pew. The choir hummed low, mournful notes as sunlight filtered through stained glass windows and painted the church in red and blue shadows. Pictures of Marcus lined the front, his smile so bright it hurt to look at. I clutched Calvin's hand the entire time. He held on, but he was trembling. When I looked over at Darius, expecting to find his face crumpled with grief, his chest heaving, his tears falling like mine, he was calm. Too calm, expression blank, posture stiff, eyes dry and distant. He hugged me when people weren't looking, but his arms didn't shake. His voice didn't tremble. His lips didn't quiver with loss. At first, I told myself everyone grieves differently. Some people hold pain in strange ways, but deep down, far beneath the surface, something about his stillness unsettled me. Days passed. Weeks passed. Then months. And then suddenly he changed. The same son who had been withdrawn, distant, and quiet his whole life began acting like the perfect child. Darius started waking up early to drive me to school before heading to his shifts. He showed up at Calvin's workshop with lunch and stayed to help sandwood, carry planks, and fix the equipment that had been acting funny for months. He cracked jokes at dinner. He played with our nieces and nephews during family gatherings. He asked about how we were holding up, offering a shoulder. Offering comfort, he became attentive, soft, spoken, thoughtful. The kind of son any mother would pray for. He even started going to church with us again, sitting through long sermons with his hands folded, nodding as though he felt every word. Eventually, he married a pretty young woman named Tiana, smart and charming with a sweet smile, and they had two bright-eyed children who adored us. Darius built his own carpentry business, and although it wasn't perfect, he seemed proud. He would come over for dinners with his little family, filling our home with laughter again. For a while, I told myself, maybe he just grew up. Maybe he's finally becoming the man. I always believed he could be. Maybe Marcus's death really did change him for the better. Life settled into a strange, bittersweet normal again. We grieved Marcus, but we kept moving forward. We held on to the good moments tightly: church picnics, family reunions, birthdays, holidays. And even though I sometimes felt a sharp ache whenever I saw the empty chair where Marcus used to sit, I believed time was healing us. I believed our family was whole again, but I didn't know then that Darius's transformation wasn't healing. It was preparation. It was performance. It was calculation. And all of it was leading to the day he would try to finish what he started. 6 months before the day our son pushed us off that cliff, Calvin and I made a decision we thought was simple: updating our will. We weren't wealthy people. We'd spent our whole lives working honest jobs, stretching paychecks, saving slowly, doing without when we had to. We didn't have stacks of investments or secret accounts tucked away. We had our home, a small patch of land behind it, Calvin's workshop, and roughly $200,000 in lifetime savings. Enough to pass down, enough to help our grandchildren someday. Enough to feel proud of after 40 years of sweat and sacrifice. It was Darius who brought up the idea first. He stopped by one Sunday afternoon with Tiana and the kids. They stayed for dinner: pot roast, cornbread, and collard greens. After the kids ran off to the living room to watch cartoons, Darius leaned back in his chair, tapped the table twice, and cleared his throat like he was easing into a business meeting. "Ma, Pops, y'all ever think about updating your will? I mean, just to make sure everything's in order?" I remember blinking at him, confused. We'd never discussed death in detail with our children. Most kids avoid that topic altogether. But he spoke calmly, as if he'd been rehearsing it. Tiana chimed in with a soft smile. "You know, just so the family stays prepared. It avoids confusion down the line. A lot of folks don't plan ahead." It sounded reasonable. Too reasonable. Calvin nodded slowly. "Well, guess it wouldn't hurt." I felt a chill in my stomach, but I pushed it aside. I didn't want to seem paranoid, especially when everything lately had felt so peaceful with Darius. A week later, he drove us to an attorney's office downtown, a clean, modern place with glass walls and polished floors. The lawyer asked questions, reviewed documents, typed everything with careful precision. Darius stood behind us while we signed the final forms. I could actually feel him watching us, not like a loving son checking on his aging parents. Something else, something sharper. I tried to brush the feeling away, but it lodged beneath my ribs like a thorn. After we stepped out into the hallway, Darius placed a hand on my shoulder. "Don't worry, Ma. Everything y'all built, I'll make sure it's taken care of. I'll distribute it fairly when the time comes." His tone was soothing. Too soothing. The minute he walked off to grab a coffee from the lobby, I turned to Calvin. "Something about this doesn't feel right." He kissed my forehead lightly. "Baby, he's just stepping up. Let the boy help." But my heart said otherwise. After the will was finalized, Darius and Tiana began visiting more often, but the tone of their visits changed. Suddenly, our conversations always drifted toward money. Tiana would open her laptop at the dining table. "You know, Ma, it wouldn't hurt to look at better investment plans for your savings. There are strategies that could triple your returns." Darius paced the living room, hands in his pockets. "Y'all ever think about selling this place? The market's high right now. You could downsize, get something easier to maintain. Downsize? I echoed. Yeah, he said. Y'all deserve comfort. A smaller place, something modern. Maybe closer to us. And what happens to this house? I asked. He didn't hesitate. I'll handle it. I'll make sure everything goes smooth. Tiana would add her soft, sugary voice beside him. We're just trying to help, Ma. This house is old. Too many stairs. Too much responsibility. But I wasn't fooled. Every sentence was dipped in honey. But every intention tasted like greed. They would bring brochures. Show us pictures of condos, compare interest rates. Pull up spreadsheets full of numbers we never asked for. Whenever I resisted, even gently, I'd catch a flicker in Darius's eyes. Irritation, annoyance, something cold. One afternoon, after they left, I stood washing dishes in the kitchen while Calvin dried them beside me. I stared at the water swirling into the drain and whispered, I don't like this. It feels like they're pushing us. Calvin sighed. They just want the best. You read too much into things sometimes. But I couldn't shake the unease. It clung to me like smoke after a fire. A few days later, my sister Denise came by. I sat her down at the table and told her everything. The attorney visit, the condo talk, the pressure. She didn't hesitate. Loretta. Why would Darius be so eager to control your property if he's doing fine financially? Why the rush? Something ain't adding up. Her words hit the exact nervous spot in my chest. So the next week, when Darius brought up selling the house again, I looked him dead in his eyes and said, You seem mighty pressed about our finances lately. Why is that? His smile froze. His jaw tightened just slightly. Not enough for most people to catch. But I caught it because I care, he said flatly. Someone around here has to think logically about the future. Tiana placed her hand on his arm, stroking softly, but her eyes were sharp. We're only trying to help. And there it was again, that flare of annoyance, of frustration, burning just beneath Darius's polite tone. Later that night, Calvin and I had our first real argument in years. He accused me of mistrusting our only living child. I accused him of ignoring the warning signs. We both went to bed angry, something we almost never did. I lay awake long after he fell asleep, staring at the shadows on the ceiling, replaying moments from years ago. Darius's sudden sweetness after Marcus died, his sharp tone whenever money came up, his strange composure at the funeral. The uneasy thought drifted across my mind like smoke. Why does this feel familiar? Why does this feel like something I've seen before? And then it hit me, hard enough to make my breath hitch. Darius's shift from distant to perfect began the moment Marcus died, the moment Calvin had confessed that Darius changed forever. The truth was creeping toward me, slowly, quietly, but undeniably. And I didn't know then that this was just the beginning, that everything we'd built, everything we'd trusted, was about to crumble. After weeks of feeling that gnawing tension growing inside me, I finally reached for the one person who never sugar-coated anything in her life. My sister Denise. If something smelled wrong, Denise would be the first to say it. If a situation felt crooked, she'd call it crooked. She had a sixth sense for danger, for deceit, for things that pretended to be harmless. So I dialed her number one Thursday morning, my hand shaking just slightly as the phone rang. She answered on the second ring. Girl, what's going on? You sound tight in the chest. I didn't waste time. I told her everything. The will, the sudden pressure to sell the house, the constant talk about our savings, the condo brochures, the way Darius's eyes flickered with impatience every time I hesitated. I told her about the attorney visit and how I felt like Darius was watching our signatures, not our well-being. I told her about the tension in the house, how I felt cornered even when no one was raising their voice. When I finished, there was a long, weighted silence on the other end of the line. Then Denise exhaled sharply. Loretta, this don't sit right with me at all. Her voice dropped into a tone I knew too well, the tone she used when she sensed danger. Why is Darius so invested in your money? Why now? And why so hard? I don't know, I whispered, though the unease was already curling cold in my belly. Exactly. And if he's financially stable like y'all think, he shouldn't be this pressed about inheritance. Something ain't right. Keep your eyes open. Her words hung in the air long after I hung up. That afternoon, Darius and Tiana came by again just to check in. But it wasn't long before the conversation slid, as it always seemed to nowadays, straight into money. How much are y'all actually paying for insurance every month? Tiana asked, tapping her laptop. Your savings could last longer if you moved into something smaller, Darius added. Flipping through real estate listings like he was choosing dinner plates, newer homes are safer for older folks. She continued, her tone sweet but firm. Less risk of falls, fires, maintenance issues. I held up my hand. Enough. They both paused. I looked straight at Darius. Why are you so interested in our finances all of a sudden? His face barely moved, but something changed in his eyes. A small, sharp shift. I'm the only one thinking responsibly, he replied. You and Pops need help, and I'm stepping up. Help doesn't mean taking control. I said quietly. He smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was tight, forced, paper thin. You're being dramatic, he muttered. Tin. Placed a calming hand on his arm. Let's not make this into something it's not. But it already felt like something big. Something looming. That night, after the house fell quiet and the kids were asleep, Calvin and I had one of the hardest conversations we'd had in decades. He insisted I was reading too much into it. Baby, Darius is just trying to take care of us. He's not perfect, but he's not a bad son. You're letting suspicion cloud common sense. I felt my pulse thudding at my temples. And you're letting love blind you. I shot back. I know what I'm seeing. He's pushing us. He's strategizing. Calvin scrubbed a hand over his face, looking suddenly older. We don't have evidence of anything. Do you remember how he acted after Marcus died? I asked quietly. He froze, just slightly. But I saw it. Loretta, he wasn't grieving. I pushed. He didn't cry. He didn't break. He just changed overnight, like he flipped a switch and became the perfect son. Calvin swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. I stepped closer. And you know it. You've known it for years. You just never said why. His eyes darted away. He rubbed his hands together. A nervous habit he only had when something cut him deep. For the first time since Marcus died, I saw something in Calvin's expression that shook me. Guilt. Fear. Memory. Double quotes. Calvin. I whispered. What is it? What happened that night? What do you know about Marcus's death? He didn't answer. Not out loud. But the way his shoulders sagged, the way he couldn't meet my eyes, the way he sat down at the edge of the bed like his spirit had suddenly become too heavy. That was the first moment I realized Calvin had been carrying a truth so heavy, so monstrous he'd buried it for decades. A truth connected to Marcus. A truth connected to Darius. A truth that was finally clawing its way out of the dark. The truth that would shatter me beyond repair. Calvin sat on the edge of the bed like a man carrying 40 years of weight on his shoulders. His hands trembled. His breathing shifted, slow, heavy, strained, the way it does when a person is about to rip open a wound they've kept stitched shut for too long. I stepped toward him, my heart pounding hard enough to hurt. Calvin, I whispered. Tell me. He didn't look at me. Not at first. Instead, he stared at the floor. At the same spot where our sons used to drop their school bags, where little sneakers used to pile up, where Marcus used to tie Darius's shoes for him when he was 5. Finally, he spoke, and what he said broke the world I thought I lived in. It wasn't an accident. He whispered. His voice cracked like old wood beneath pressure. Marcus's death. It wasn't an accident. My knees nearly gave out. Calvin swallowed hard, his eyes shining with something I'd never seen in him before. A deep, tortured guilt. That night, he said, I heard the boys arguing. They didn't know I was awake. They left the house. I followed them. He took a shuddering breath. They went all the way out to that gorge outside the city. I stayed back in the trees, watching. My skin went cold. Marcus found out Darius was stealing from our savings, Calvin continued, his voice raw. He had proof. He said he was going to show us everything. Marcus wasn't yelling. He was heartbroken. He kept asking Darius why he did it, asking him to stop before he ruined his life. A tear slid down Calvin's cheek, something I had seen only twice in 40 years. He pressed his fists against his thighs. Darius snapped. He whispered. He started shouting that he was tired of being the younger son. Tired of being compared. Tired of feeling like Marcus was the golden boy, the one everybody loved. He said he deserved more. My mouth went dry. But baby, he said, his voice breaking, Marcus wouldn't fight him. He just stood there. He just kept saying, "You're my brother. We can fix this." Calvin squeezed his eyes shut, and then it happened. What happened? I breathed, though my soul already knew the answer. Calvin's jaw shook. He pushed him, Loretta. He pushed Marcus. He didn't slip. He didn't lose his balance. Darius shoved him, hard, and Marcus fell. I clapped a hand over my mouth as a scream clawed its way up my throat. Calvin continued, each word slicing him open. Marcus reached for something. A root, a rock, anything. He tried, baby. He tried to catch himself. But he went over the edge. I heard him hit the bottom. I felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. I ran down after him. I held him. I held our boy until he took his last breath. Calvin choked on the words. My tears blurred the room. I felt myself collapsing inside. Why? I whispered. Why didn't you tell me? Calvin covered his face with both hands. He begged me. His voice cracked. Darius begged me to protect him. He said it was an accident. He said he didn't mean it. He said he panicked. He said he slipped. He claimed he was just trying to shove Marcus off him after they fought. And you believed him? I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief and pain. He didn't answer. Not at first. Then he whispered. I didn't want to lose both my sons in one night. And suddenly, I understood the full tragedy. The night Marcus died, I lost both my children. But I only buried one. Calvin went on. Voice hollow. Darius promised he would pay back every dollar he stole. He said he would turn his life around. He said protecting him would save the family, keep us from breaking apart. But it didn't, I cried. It broke us anyway. Calvin nodded slowly, his face etched with decades of regret. He never paid the money back, he confessed. He kept stealing. I found out years later. But every time I tried to confront him, I saw Marcus's face. I heard his last breath. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't lose him too. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. My world, the family I thought I knew, was shattering piece by piece. So you carried this alone, I whispered. You let me grieve thinking my baby died in an accident. You let Darius stand over his grave dry-eyed. You let him move on like nothing happened. Calvin broke then, truly broke. He bowed his head and wept, years of pain pouring out of him in rough, suffocating sobs. I'm sorry, Loretta, he cried. I'm so sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was keeping what was left of our family alive. But I should have told you. I should have stopped him. I should have never protected him. My heart felt like it had been torn open with bare hands. I sat beside my husband, the man who held our home together. The man who loved us fiercely, the man who made the worst choice of his life out of fear. And for the first time, I didn't know how to hold him. I didn't know how to breathe because the truth was finally clear. Darius didn't just kill his brother. He had buried guilt under kindness. He had buried ambition under love. He had buried greed under responsibility. And now, years later, the same hunger that made him push Marcus was turning toward us. I barely slept after Calvin confessed the truth. The moment he finished speaking, it felt like the air inside our bedroom turned heavy, thick enough to choke me. I lay there staring at the wall, replaying Marcus's final moments through Calvin's broken words, feeling the floor tilt beneath me over and over. My mind couldn't quiet down. My heart couldn't slow down. I felt like my entire world had been built on top of a grave. And now I finally knew who put one of my sons in it, just as the sun began bleeding light through our curtains. Calvin's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He picked it up, looked at the screen, and froze. It's Darius, he said quietly. The name alone twisted my stomach. He answered, clearing his throat like he didn't want his voice to give anything away. Hey, Pops! Darius's voice leaked through the speaker, cheerful and warm. Too cheerful. You and me up yet? Calvin forced calmness into his tone. Yeah, what's going on? I've been thinking, Darius said, excitement dripping from his voice. Your 40th anniversary is coming up. And Tiana and I want to do something special. Really special. My eyes met Calvin's single quotes S. We both knew. Special was the last thing this was, I was thinking. A pause. You know that trail out by Magnolia Ridge? The one with the lookout over the valley? Every nerve in my body snapped awake. Calvin sat straighter. We've never hiked that one. That's the point, Darius chuckled. It'll be beautiful. A perfect family outing. Fresh air, photos, memories. Then dinner afterward. What do y'all say? This Saturday? I could feel something cold creeping up my spine. Calvin was quiet for a beat too long. You there, Pops? Darius asked. Yeah, Calvin said softly. We'll think about it. Good, Darius replied, but you should go. You need to go. Seriously, I already mapped everything out. Don't worry about a thing. There it was, the push. The insistence, the urgency that didn't feel like love. When Calvin hung up, we sat in silence. Then he said the words I had been fearing. He's planning to finish what he started. A tremor ran through me. He killed his brother near a gorge. I whispered, and now he wants us on a trail by a ridge. Calvin nodded. Jaw tight. If we refuse, he said, he'll find another way. Something we can't see coming. A fire. A break-in. Poison. Anything. The room felt colder. He wants the money, I said. And he wants it now. Calvin took my hands. We need a plan. I shook my head, panic rising. We need to go to the police. He grimaced. Loretta. Baby, I covered up Marcus's death. I kept quiet for 20 years. I never told a soul. I hid evidence. If we walk in there with nothing but my confession and your suspicions, it won't hold. He wasn't wrong. We had no proof. No eyewitnesses. No recordings. No documents. Just the truth. And the truth wasn't enough when it was buried under decades of silence. If we accuse him without evidence and he finds out, Calvin said, we're dead before we can blink. The fear in his voice was something I had never heard before. Not even when money was tight. Not even through sleepless nights with sick kids. This was different. This was survival fear. So Calvin did something he never did. He planned. Real. Strategic planning. We're going on that trip, he said. But we're not going unprepared. I swallowed. What are you thinking? He reached for his phone. I'll record everything, he said. The drive. The hike. The conversations. If he slips up, even a little, we'll have proof. And if he doesn't slip up? I asked, my voice cracking. Then I'll get him talking, Calvin replied, his eyes dark. I'll make him angry. Proud men get sloppy when they feel superior. He wasn't wrong. Darius always revealed more when he thought no one could challenge him. Calvin stood, gripping the back of the chair like he needed something solid to hold on to. And I'll write everything down, he said. A full account of what happened to Marcus and what I saw. I'll put it with our documents. Why? I asked it. He hesitated. Then he spoke quietly. In case we don't come back. My breath caught. No, I whispered. Don't talk like that. But he held my face between his hands. Loretta, baby. I need to be real. If something happens to us, your sisters and the police need to know the truth. All of it. He kissed my forehead. I won't let him win, he murmured. Not this time. That evening, while the sun dipped low and the cicadas buzzed through the neighborhood, Calvin sat at the dining table writing a 5-page letter, a confession, a timeline, a map of the past 25 years. He folded it, placed it in an envelope, and tucked it beneath our important papers. Then he turned to me, tears glistening in his eyes. If tomorrow is our last night, he said, I want you to hear me say this now. I nodded, unable to speak. I love you, Loretta. I loved you when we were young and broke, when we were raising babies, when we were standing at Marcus's funeral, when we were laughing on porches, when we were growing old. I've never loved anyone the way I love you. A tear slid down my cheek. I love you too, I whispered, my voice shaking. Lord knows I do. We held each other for a long, quiet moment, the house still around us. The weight of years pressing down like hands on our shoulders. We fell asleep wrapped around each other. Not because we were comfortable, But because we were afraid this might be the last night we ever would, because somewhere out there, our son was planning our death. Saturday morning came too fast. The house felt unnaturally quiet as Calvin and I dressed. I slipped into a soft blue sweater and black hiking pants, hands shaking without my permission. Calvin put on his old work boots, the same boots he'd worn building half the furniture in our home, and I wondered if he chose them because they made him feel strong, or because he wanted something sturdy on the day his own child might kill him. When the doorbell rang, the sound made my whole body flinch. Calvin squeezed my hand once before opening the door. There stood Darius and Tiana, smiling bright as sunrise, Tiana holding a travel mug, Darius holding his phone, eyes lit with excitement that didn't feel real. There go my favorite people. Darius beamed. You ready for your anniversary surprise? I forced a smile. Calvin managed a nod. Tiana hugged me gently, her perfume sweet and heavy. Y'all are gonna love today, she said. We planned something really special. Special? The word hit me like a stone. We climbed into their SUV, Darius driving, Tiana in the passenger seat, Calvin and I in the back. The ride started smoothly, sunlight flickering through pine trees as we drove past the outskirts of Atlanta. Darius kept the conversation light. How's work been, Pops? You feeling okay these days, Ma? We're gonna get some beautiful pictures today. Every question felt like a knife covered in sugar. Calvin quietly tapped his phone, beginning the audio recording. I pretended to look out the window, though my eyes kept drifting to the reflection of Darius in the rearview mirror. His smile never reached his eyes. 2 hours later, we arrived at the trailhead leading to Magnolia Ridge. Tiana hopped out first, stretching her arms. Y'all ready? The sky is clear, the air is perfect, and this trail is gorgeous. We started walking. The first stretch was easy, soft dirt, scattered leaves, tall pines swaying overhead. The air smelled like sap and soil and distant water. Calvin walked beside me, every step careful. I knew without looking that he was recording. Darius stayed behind us, too close, close enough that I could feel his presence at my back. Tiana walked slightly ahead, pointing out small things like she was guiding tourists. Look at those wildflowers. See the little creek down there? Oh, a redbird. But her voice carried an edge, a practiced cheerfulness that didn't match her eyes when she glanced back at us. After 40 minutes, the trail grew steeper. My knees started aching. Calvin's breathing turned heavier, not alarming. Just the sound of a man his age walking uphill longer than usual. You too good? Darius called behind us. His tone too bright. Too concerned, too rehearsed. We're fine, Calvin replied. We're almost at the lookout, Tiana added. But that was a lie. I saw the map at the trailhead. The lookout was another hour away. And then, without warning, Tiana veered off the main trail. Y'all, she called. Come look at this view. It's even better than the official lookout. My stomach twisted. The spot she pointed to was not a lookout. It wasn't part of the trail. It was a narrow, dangerous path with loose rocks leading to a jagged edge that dropped straight down into the valley. Calvin and I exchanged a glance, but refusing would look suspicious. So we followed. The dirt under our boots shifted as we climbed the last part. The wind whipped harder up here, blowing my hair across my face. I could feel my pulse in my teeth. We reached the cliff. The valley spread beneath us, massive and breathtaking. A long drop, maybe 70 or 80 feet, dotted with sharp rocks and fallen branches. Tiana clapped her hands together. This is perfect. Let's get a photo for your anniversary. Calvin squeezed my hand. Just once, just enough to say, it's happening. Tiana positioned us right near the edge. A little back, she said sweetly. Just a little more. Perfect lighting right there. My shoes scraped loose stones. The wind pushed softly at my back. I felt the empty space yawning behind me. Darius stepped up behind us. Yeah, he added, step back just a bit more. His voice changed. It wasn't cheerful. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't even pretending anymore. It was flat. Cold. Intentional. Calvin turned his head slightly, just enough to look at our son. And in that split second, Darius moved. Fast. Deliberate. Without hesitation. He lunged toward us. But Calvin, my husband, my partner, the man who had been preparing for this exact moment, reacted just as fast. He grabbed Darius's wrist, twisted, and pulled him forward with all his strength. And suddenly, everything happened at once. Tiana screamed. Dirt flew. Rocks cracked under boots. The ground dropped beneath. US. And all four of us, me, Calvin, Darius, and Tiana, went over the edge. Together, I didn't feel myself fall at first. I felt the wind ripping past my face. I heard Calvin's voice shouting my name, or maybe it was just terror echoing in my head. Then the world smashed into me. Pain exploded through my body. Air burst from my lungs. My vision exploded with white light. And as everything blurred and pulsed and swam around me, I heard the one voice that meant everything in that moment. Calvin. His voice was ragged, broken, but clear. Loretta, don't move. Play dead. When my body hit the ground, the force rattled through my bones like lightning. A sharp, tearing pain shot through my ribs, stealing every ounce of breath I had left. My ears rang so loudly I couldn't tell if I was crying or screaming, until I realized I couldn't move enough to do either. For a moment, everything blurred: sky, dirt, blood, fear, melting into one dizzying smear. Then I heard it, the one thing that kept me conscious. Calvin's voice, barely a whisper, barely a sound at all. Loretta, don't you move. Play dead. His breath was ragged, like each inhale shredded him from the inside. But those words, they sliced through my panic, anchoring me to reality. I forced my body to go limp. Every instinct screamed at me to clutch my ribs, to curl up, to cry, to move. But I didn't. I let myself become still. Still like stone, still like someone who had already left this world. Footsteps crunched above us. Not hurried, not panicked. Just moving. Walking. Assessing. I felt a shadow fall over. Darius. I kept my eyes closed, fighting the urge to shake. She's done, he muttered. No way she survived that. His tone wasn't grieving. It wasn't shocked. It was irritated, annoyed that the job had taken this much effort. Tiana groaned somewhere nearby. She must have been injured in the fall, but not enough to keep her from talking. They should have fallen cleaner, she said through clenched teeth. You pulled too hard. Or you didn't push right. You're the one who told him to back up, Darius snapped. Their voices grew sharper. Angrier, not with fear, but with frustration, like plans had gone slightly off track. Tiana limped closer. I heard pebbles shifting beneath her shoes. Check his pulse, she whispered. A beat of silence. Then Darius's voice. Low but steady. He's gone. My heart nearly shattered. For a split second, I thought Calvin was dead until I felt his finger brush mine ever so slightly. Alive. Barely. But alive. I kept my breath shallow. My eyelids shut, my body frozen. Tiana exhaled shakily. Okay, this works. This still works. We just have to look injured enough so the story makes sense. Darius responded through clenched teeth. We'll say they slipped, that they lost their balance. We tried to grab them. The rocks were loose. It all happened too fast. There it was, the rehearsed tragedy, the well-crafted lie. Tiana wasn't done. And when the police ask why we're not badly hurt, we'll say we landed on the softer patch. Darius interrupted. Just like we planned. My stomach nodded. He'd planned everything, every detail, even their injuries. Tiana took a shaky breath. We should go find help. The sooner we start crying, the better. Not yet, Darius said sharply. We need to be sure. Look at them again. His footsteps approached. Every muscle in my body screamed to tense. But I stayed limp. I felt his presence hover above me. His shadow pooled over my face. Then he said something that froze my heart. Marcus didn't scream either. Tiana's voice snapped. Darius, stop. No, he hissed. This is what had to happen. They should have listened. My breath caught in my throat. He'd just confessed. Right there, standing over our dead bodies. Let's go, Tiana urged. We can't stay here. Their footsteps moved away, slow at first, then faster as they climbed back toward the main trail. Sticks snapped under their shoes. Stones shifted. Their voices faded. When I could no longer hear them, I opened my eyes to slits. The world was dizzying. The sky swayed. The trees blurred. But Calvin's face slowly came into focus. His cheek was cut, blood crusted along his temple. His breathing was shallow, painful, but steady. He turned his head slightly toward me. You okay? He whispered. No, I breathed. But I'm alive. He winced, trying to adjust. Loretta, we're gonna make it. We just gotta stay still until someone finds us. I swallowed hard, tears burning behind my eyes. Did you hear them? I whispered. They admitted it. They admitted everything. Calvin nodded weakly. I heard. For the first time since we fell, I allowed myself one slow breath, a breath thick with pain, betrayal, and the faintest flicker of hope. If rescue came soon. If someone found us before Darius returned to check, if Calvin's recording was intact, we might survive. We might finally expose the truth. We might finally bring justice for Marcus. I looked at Calvin, my voice trembling. We can't die here, I whispered. Not like this. Not by his hands. He squeezed my fingers faintly, a tiny, fragile defiance against death. We won't, he breathed. I swear to you. We won't. We laid there in agony, waiting. Broken but alive, terrified but determined, because the fight wasn't over. The fall wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The world kept fading in and out as we lay at the bottom of that ridge. Time didn't move. Normally, moments stretched, blurred, snapped, disappeared. But help eventually came, and when it did, everything happened fast. Rescue workers arrived first, called in by hikers who spotted Tiana limping up the trail sobbing, screaming about a tragic accident. Darius held her like a grieving, protective husband, his face twisted with well-rehearsed anguish. They fell, Tiana cried. We tried to save them. The ground just collapsed. Her voice was shaky in all the right places. Her tears were perfectly timed. Even her limp looked believable. Darius played his part too, wiping his eyes, rubbing his forehead, clenching his jaw like a man fighting back trauma. His voice cracked as he told rescuers the same rehearsed script. I tried to grab my dad. He slipped. They both flipped. I couldn't reach them. God, I couldn't reach them. Every lie came out smooth, polished, practiced, and all the while Calvin and I lay motionless, pretending to be unconscious. Our last defense, our last weapon, our last chance. The rescue team checked our pulses, stabilized our bodies, and strapped us onto stretchers. Darius leaned over me, brushing hair from my forehead, pretending to be a devastated son. Ma, I'm so sorry, he whispered. But underneath that broken tone, I heard something else. A warning, a threat, a reminder to stay silent forever. Tiana sniffled beside him. They loved hiking, she told the medics. They always went on little trails. This was supposed to be special. She pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. Good acting, Oscar worthy. We were airlifted to Atlanta General Hospital, sirens screaming through the sky. My consciousness flickered in and out, pain pulling me under, then dragging me back. When we reached the trauma ward, doctors rushed around us, IVs, scans, oxygen masks, monitors beeping steadily. Nurses moved with purpose, whispering to each other. Calling out vitals, I kept my eyes mostly closed. Breathing SHALLWOY. Calvin did the same. We had to. If Darius thought we were alive, he'd finish the job. Hours passed. Then I heard footsteps. Light ones. Someone entered my room quietly, not the stomping boots of a doctor or the brisk steps of a nurse on rounds. These steps were careful. Soft. Intentional. A woman's voice whispered near my ear. Mrs. Langston, can you hear me? I didn't move. She tried again, even softer. If you can hear me, move your finger just once. I hesitated, fear clawing at me, but something in her tone felt different. Not suspicious, not manipulative, not rehearsed. It felt protective. So I moved my finger. One tiny twitch. The woman sucked in a breath. My name is Nurse Inez Henderson, she whispered. And I heard something your son said outside the ambulance bay. My heart slammed against my ribs. He leaned over your stretcher, she said, her voice low and steady, and told you he hoped you learned your lesson. He said you shouldn't have questioned him. He said too much. Her words made my blood turn to ice. She brushed her fingertips against my palm, a quiet reassurance. I knew right then that something wasn't right. So if you're pretending to be unconscious, you're safe with me. Her words cracked something open inside me, relief so sharp. I almost cried. Move your finger again if you understand. I moved it. She leaned closer. I'm going to bring the doctor and the police. When they come, if you're ready to open your eyes, do it. If not, we'll wait. But you're not alone anymore. Do you hear me? Another finger twitch. She squeezed my hand once before leaving. Minutes later, more footsteps entered, heavier this time. Confident, purposeful. A calm voice spoke near my bed. Mrs. Langston. I'm Dr. Harris. Nurse Henderson informed us there may be more to your situation than a fall. If you can hear me, we're here to help. He paused. We believe you. That was when Calvin made his move. A soft groan. Oh. Shift of his hand, his eyelids fluttering. I followed slowly, painfully. I let my eyes open. The room sharpened around me. Bright overhead lights, white tile floors, a heart monitor beside me ticking steadily. Nurse Inez stood beside the doctor with quiet determination. Behind them were two police officers, a woman and a man, both watching us closely. The woman stepped forward. Mrs. Langston. Mr. Langston. If you're awake, we need to know what happened. My voice was thin, scratchy, but alive. Our son pushed us. I whispered. Nurse Inez placed a hand on my arm. Steadying me. The officer nodded. Tell us. Everything. And I did. I told them about the will, the manipulation, the pressure. The trip, the setup, Marcus's death. The truth Calvin had buried for 20 years, the fall, the confessions we heard as we lay broken. Everything. When I finished, the officer turned to Calvin. Mr. Langston, do you have anything to add? Calvin nodded weakly. My phone, he muttered. I recorded the whole day. The hike, the conversations. Everything. The male officer stiffened. Where is it? Calvin gestured toward the small bag on the chair beside him. The officer retrieved the phone, unlocked it with Calvin's fingerprint, and played the recordings. The room fell silent except for our son's own voice spilling his guilt into the air. You're the only one thinking logically. They should have fallen cleaner. Marcus didn't scream either. The officers exchanged a look, the kind of look that meant this wasn't going to slip away. Not this time. Detective Johnson straightened. Mr. and Mrs. Langston. Thank you. You've given us more than enough. Her eyes hardened. Your son and daughter-in-law won't leave this hospital tonight. Detective Johnson didn't waste a second while Calvin's recording played again in her hand. Darius's voice crackling through the speaker. Confessing without realizing he ever had. She motioned to the officers. Secure them, she said. Now. Outside our hospital room. Through the tiny window in the door, I could see Darius and Tiana sitting in the waiting area. They were talking softly, pretending to be grieving. Pretending to be the devastated, heartbroken son and daughter-in-law who had just witnessed a tragedy. Tiana leaned her head on Darius's shoulder, her hand rubbing slow circles across his back. Anyone walking by would have believed them. But not anymore. Two officers approached them. Darius Langston. Tiana Langston? Both looked up instantly. Yes? Darius said, rising to his feet, confusion painting his face. You're under arrest. Tiana gasped, grabbing Darius's arm. For what? What's happening? Detective Johnson stepped forward. Badge in hand, you are being charged with the murder of your brother, Marcus Langston, and the attempted murder of your parents, Calvin and Loretta Langston. Darius's entire face twisted, disbelief first, then panic, then rage. That's insane. He shouted, my parents fell. It was an accident. Detective Johnson didn't flinch. You confessed on a recording. We have everything we need. Tiana turned white as a sheet. She stumbled backward, her hand clapping over her mouth. What recording? She whispered, what recording? Your in-laws survived the fall. The detective said coldly. They heard everything you said. They have identified you. The trail cameras corroborate their story, and Mr. Langston recorded the entire hike. It was over right. They're in the hallway of Atlanta General Hospital. Darius tried to bolt, But officers slammed him against the wall, cuffing him as he fought like a wild animal. "You liars!" He shouted down the hall toward our room. "I took care of you. I did everything for you. You ungrateful." His words turned to snarls. Tiana broke next to him, collapsing into a sobbing heap on the floor. "I didn't push them," she screamed. "I only helped plan it. It was his idea. He told me. He told me." Her confession spilled everywhere. Uncontrollable and panicked, the more she talked, the deeper she buried herself. The media got hold of the story within 2 days. Atlanta. Couple survives murder attempt by own son decades old. Family secret revealed in shocking twist. Brothers murder in 2002 reopened after parents. FAL reporters camped outside the hospital. Cameras followed officers as they escorted Darius and Tiana into holding cells. News anchors dissected every second of the recording, every detail of the hiking trail, every piece of the family history. The community was horrified. Church members wept for us. Neighbors brought food, flowers, prayers. Everyone kept saying, "I can't believe your own son did this. How could he? What kind of monster?" But I always looked away because I knew exactly what kind. I had raised him. I had seen the shadows. I just didn't understand them then. The trial lasted 8 months. Prosecutors laid everything bare. Darius's financial ruin, the debt he owed dangerous lenders, the $50,000 he'd stolen from us over the years, the life insurance policies he'd pressured us into, his fake perfect son act, the staged anniversary trip, Marcus's murder 20 years earlier, the Cliff plan, the coordinated lies, the recorded confession, Tiana's involvement, the incriminating recorder found in Darius's backpack, and Calvin's written letter, his final attempt to save us if we had died. The courtroom gasped when the recording played, hearing my son's voice say, "Marcus didn't scream either." Was the kind of pain you don't ever forget, not even after you heal. Prosecutors showed pictures, maps, timelines, financial records, receipts, texts. The evidence was overwhelming. Darius remained cold through most of the trial. Sometimes he smirked, sometimes he glared at us. His parents, with hatred so sharp it sliced straight through the room. Tiana cried every day, every time she took the stand. She tried to blame him, but every word only showed she was part of it too. Finally, after hearings, testimonies, cross-examinations, and days of deliberation, the verdict came. Guilty on all counts. Darius was convicted of first-degree murder for killing Marcus, and first-degree attempted murder for trying to kill us. Tiana was convicted as an accomplice. She didn't push us, but she planned it, lied for it, supported it, and helped orchestrate every detail. Both were sentenced to life in prison without parole. When the judge asked if I wanted to address Darius before sentencing, I stood. My legs trembled, my throat tightened, but I forced myself to look at the boy I birthed. The boy who killed one child and tried to kill the other 2 people who loved him most. "You weren't born evil," I said softly. "You became someone I don't recognize. Marcus was my son. You were too, but the boy I loved died the night you pushed your brother off that cliff." I inhaled shakily. "You buried him. You buried your humanity. And now you will live with the consequences." He stared at me with a hardness that once would have shattered me, but not anymore, not after everything. 1 year after the trial, Calvin and I moved back into our home. The quiet felt different now. Heavy but peaceful. The kids, our grandchildren, Darius's and Tiana's, came to live with us after. Social workers determined we were the safest place for them. 2 sweet children with no understanding of the nightmare their parents caused. We adopted them legally. We gave them stability, predictability, healing. Sometimes at night, I'd tuck them in and tell them gentle stories about their Uncle Marcus, his kindness, his laugh, his bright dreams, never mentioning the tragedy. They didn't need those shadows. Not now, yet not ever. If I could help it, Calvin would sit beside me on the porch in the evenings, his hand resting over mine as cicadas hummed in the trees and the sky faded into soft purple. We survived not because we were lucky, not because someone saved us. We survived because we fought, because we trusted each other, because truth finally came to light. We learned that love can be powerful, but courage is what keeps you alive. And through every ache, every scar, every fractured piece of our family, we chose to live, we chose to forgive ourselves, we chose to protect the innocent left behind. Because even when your own child tries to destroy you, you don't let darkness win. Not ever.